Good evening. We are discussing about the Bhagavad Gita. Now we will have some discussion on what we need and what we demand from the Bhagavad Gita. Because whenever we are approaching a scripture, we must have some intention. And the mentality, the attitude, the mindset with which we are going to study a scripture is more important. And the last time we have also talked about that. With what attitude? Well, if we want for some arguments, for some counter arguments, for justifying what you say, if you want to quote some lines of the Bhagavad Gita, then perhaps that is not the right attitude with which we have to do that. Because to show our erudition, to show our learning, to show our wisdom, the Shastras and these scriptures are not meant. As we have already time and again we have discussed that it can uplift. It has to uplift. If a scripture doesn't do that, then the purpose of that particular scripture is not served. Is never served. So by saying this, we have some need. So what is the need? What is the need to read the Bhagavad Gita? Well, whenever we are going to study a scripture, two aspects are always there. Of every scripture, two aspects are there. One is temporal, the other is eternal, perpetual. So temporal means it is related to time. Suppose we are approaching the Bhagavad Gita for making a serious study, and when we do that, first of all, we come across the temporal aspect. Temporal aspect means there is a reflection of the time during which this scripture was written. Naturally, that influence will be there. And what were the social conditions there? The influence of time, the societal surroundings, all these things are reflected. Definitely reflected. Because let us say the Bhagavad Gita was written maybe 2500 years back or even more than that. Still, it is a debatable issue. So at that time, India's social conditions and things that were happening at that time are bound to be reflected. Suppose we are reading Shakespeare's plays, or we are reading Goethe, or Dante, or Kalidas, or Valmiki. So, whoever is the writer, author, or poet, that doesn't matter. The time when it was written, or the scriptures were written, is bound to be reflected in this scripture. So that is there also in the Bhagavad Gita. And then the second aspect is eternal aspect. What is the eternal aspect? Which is beyond time, which is beyond the space, which is beyond space and time. It is not limited or restricted to the space, nor to the time. Not to the time. For example, let us say Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet was written maybe more than 300 years back. But still that oft-quoted line, now also we sometimes give as a quotation. What's in a name? that which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. This was the dialogue of Juliet. Therefore, Romeo would, wherein not Romeo called. So, I need not emphasize this. My learned friends, you are quite aware of this. So, similarly, and these things, well, Romeo and Juliet is all about a love affair. And at that time, the regal society was there, and the regal kingdom also there, royal people were there. So that has been reflected in Shakespeare's plays. In the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata, we are also able to see kings, ministers, then there are shenanigans and so many. That time is bound to be reflected. But the other aspect, the eternal aspect, is the main thing, is the matter of concern, which is beyond time, which is beyond space. Now, one thing we must remember, these scriptures are surviving since 2500 years. And the Vedas, they say it is more than 5000 years old. Vedas are more than 5000 years old. Some historians put it at 6000. But these are still there. Why? Why they are here? Because India has undergone, or India was under foreign rule for a considerable period of time. If we remember history, perhaps 2 wars in the late 12th century changed the fortune of India. 1191, 1192. 1191, the first Tirori War, and 1192, the second Tirori War. And we know that there was a rift between two brothers, Prithviraj and Jayachandra. And Jayachandra hired the services of Muhammad Ghori from the present Afghanistan. And they fought Prithviraj. In the first Tirori War, Jayachandra and Muhammad Ghori were defeated. In the next year, in the subsequent year, again they came back. The same Muhammad Ghori and Jayachandra, and this time Prithviraj was defeated, incarcerated, and he was taken back to Afghanistan. And history says, perhaps our history is silent over that. But if you go through other histories written by some other authors, they say that Prithviraj Chauhan was tortured like anything. He was tortured and killed. Well, that part is not our matter of concern. I am saying that from 1192 till 1947, so how many years? 1192 to 1947. Exactly it will be 755 years. 755 years. And for these years, India was under foreign rule. One after another, the foreign invaders came, ruled India, looted everything, and India was rendered the poorest of the countries. And lastly, it was British. Virtually, it was a culmination in British rule. So, from 1192 to 1947, for this 755 years or 7.5 centuries, let us say, India was under foreign rule. And those people, they tried to devastate anything, destroyed everything. Our culture, our educational system, our education, everything was devastated. The once upon a time great institutes like Nalanda, Takshashila were devastated, destroyed. Our scriptures, they also tried to destroy the scriptures. And many, starting from your Katha Sarit Saga, Raj Tarangini, and so many scriptures, they tried to devastate. They also burnt libraries that we have heard from the pages of history. But Bhagavad Gita is still there, the Vedas are still there, the Upanishads are still there, the Ramayana is still there, the Mahabharata is still there. So, what is the basis? How come these scriptures survived for so long, despite the foreign rulers, oppression? It is because they carry a truth that is eternal. Truth is always eternal. Well, if you say eternal truth, perhaps we are belittling the quality of truth. Truth is always eternal. It is beyond space and time. So because it is truth, that's why they are still surviving. A funny story is there, and perhaps this is not out of place to narrate it. It happened like this. A small boy from a convent school, perhaps he was reading in 3rd or 4th standard. When he came back, his father asked, "Well, beta, tell me, what did your teacher teach today?" And the boy was in a hurry. He was getting ready to go out and play with his peers, his friends. So he was in no mood to converse with his father. He said, "It's all right, I'll tell you later." But the father insisted, "Tell me, what did your teacher teach today?" And he said, "Today our teacher told a story named Ramayana." The father asked, "A story?" "Yes," the boy answered. "Yes, it's a story. And the name of the story, the title of the story is Ramayana." Then the father asked the boy, "Tell me, what did your teacher do? What did exactly your teacher tell?" And then again, the boy was vested, disgusted. He said, "You see, our teacher told many things, but I am telling you the story in the shortest manner possible." Yes, father said, Tell me, what did your teacher tell you?" You see, the story is like this. The hero, heroine, and hero's younger brother, they went on picnicking to forest. And in the meantime, the villain kidnapped the heroine. And the two brothers, hero and his younger brother, and they contacted some monkeys and bears and other animals. And they went to the villain's home, killed the villain, and rescued the heroine. And the father was amazed, astonished. The father asked, "Did your teacher tell this?" The boy said, No, teacher said many things. But this is the shortest form of the story I told you. This is the shortest form of the story I told you. Now, I will end the story here. So what do we know by this? The boy, perhaps the little boy, is quite habituated in seeing films. As in films, these things happen. There must be a hero, there must be a heroine, and there must be a villain, and there are maybe character artists and other such things. So he put the Ramayana in a film-like situation, in a film-like story. But if the Ramayana is here, as I told you a little while earlier, if the Ramayana is here, if the Mahabharata is here, if all the scriptures are here, it is because they carry eternal truths. So every scripture, as we started our discussion with this, every scripture has two things. A temporal, that is quite temporary. We can very well leave aside that, where the time of that particular period or the condition or social conditions of that particular period are reflected. We can very well leave aside that. We must concentrate what is its eternal values, what goes beyond time, so that it can help us. So Bhagavad Gita has also these things. We must remember that. And as I said in the last episode perhaps, as I said, there must be a right attitude, a mindset to approach the scriptures like this, like these rather. So I think we will continue with this in the next episode.